Adana looked like the happiest bride in Lagos that morning. Her smile lit up the whole room as her makeup was done. Her dress was perfect, and guests had already started arriving. No one could have guessed the storm she was hiding behind that smile. She left a letter on her dressing table, carefully folded. Then she vanished. Hours passed. People started whispering. The groom paced back and forth. The family made excuses. She's just getting ready. Maybe she's nervous. But deep inside something felt wrong. Her friends searched everywhere. Her phone was off. Her shoes were still under the bed. The only thing left behind, apart from the letter, was a small brown diary tucked under her pillow. One of her cousins opened the diary with shaking hands. Page after page, Adana had written about the truth she never spoke out loud. The man she was supposed to marry had been slowly destroying her. He never hit her, but he used cruel words, controlled what she wore, who she spoke to, how she laughed. He made her feel small, worthless, and trapped. She wrote about how she would cry in the bathroom so no one would hear. How she begged herself to hold on for her parents' sake. How everyone loved the groom, but they didn't know who he really was. The last page broke everyone's heart. Her handwriting was shaky. It simply said, "If I stay, I die. I'd rather disappear than become his wife." Silence fell over the wedding. The groom's face turned pale. Guests stared at each other, unsure what to do. The letter she had left on her dressing table was for her mother. It said, "Please forgive me for choosing myself. One day you'll understand." That day there was no wedding, no bouquet toss, no first dance. Just a bride who chose to save her life by walking away before it was too late. The sun was shining brightly in Kigali, and the air was filled with music, laughter, and excitement. Tumaini's wedding was the talk of the town. Grand, beautiful, and full of elegance. Guests came dressed in their finest clothes, waiting eagerly for the moment the bride would walk down the aisle. The decorations were perfect, and the groom stood confidently at the altar, smiling. Everything looked like a fairy tale. But minutes passed, and more. The music played again, but Tumaini didn't come. First, people thought she was just taking her time. Brides get nervous, right? But the whispers began. Her best friend went to check the bridal room. It was empty. Her phone was off. Her bouquet was still lying on the table. Something was wrong. Her younger sister, aching, searched the nearby chapel where Tumaini used to go to pray. There, hidden behind the flower stand, was a small red diary. It had her name written on the front. Aching opened it, her hands trembling. What she read made her cry instantly. Tumaini had been carrying a secret for months. She had fallen pregnant with the groom's child. But instead of love and care, he became angry, distant, and cruel. He told her to fix it, or the wedding was off. He forced her into an abortion. No one else knew. Not even her mother. She had been dealing with the pain silently. Pretending to smile, pretending to be okay. She wrote about how she felt empty after the procedure. How she cried every night, wondering if she'd made a mistake. But he didn't care. He just wanted the wedding to go on as if nothing had happened. She said she felt like she was dying inside. She begged God to show her a way out. The last page of the diary held just one line. "I'm not marrying my destroyer." Aching ran to their mother, tears streaming down her face. Soon the diary passed from hand to hand. The groom's smile disappeared. Guests looked around in shock. No one had seen this coming. How could such a joyful day hold so much hidden pain? There was no wedding, no vows, no cake, just truth and heartbreak. Tumaini didn't just vanish. She escaped. She saved herself. She chose to protect her soul rather than keep pretending for the sake of a perfect wedding photo. In the end, it wasn't her white dress people remembered. It was her courage. The wedding was set to be one of the biggest in Accra. The venue sparkled with gold and white decorations. The guests had filled every seat, and the choir was rehearsing their final hymn. Mamiasai was known for her quiet beauty and graceful smile, and everyone was waiting to see her walk down the aisle in her stunning dress. The groom stood tall, confident, with his friends laughing beside him. Everything looked perfect, but then time passed. 5 minutes. 15. Still no bride. Whispers started among the guests. Maybe her makeup took too long, someone said. Maybe she's fixing her dress, another offered. But deep down people could feel something wasn't right. Her phone wasn't reachable. Her makeup artist said she had stepped out of the room and never returned. Panic started to spread. Her childhood friend, Aqua, went searching through the bridal room, hoping to find a clue. That's when she noticed a small, soft-cover diary tucked under Mame's scarf on the vanity. She opened it, praying it would be nothing. But what she read stopped her cold. Mame had been forced into the marriage by her own family. Page after page she poured out her pain, how her parents said she had no choice, how they reminded her every day about the dowry, the family honor, and the money the groom's family had spent. She wrote about how trapped she felt, how the man she was meant to marry never truly saw her as a person, only as a prize to show off. One page described the night she almost ended her own life. She stood at the edge of the bridge but stepped back only because a stranger had smiled at her and asked if she was okay. That small moment gave her just enough strength to keep going. But the pressure never stopped. She was drowning in silence. Her final diary entry was dated just that morning. In shaky handwriting she wrote, "If you're reading this, it means I chose to live, just not in this cage. I'm not a bride. I'm not property. I'm just a girl who wants to breathe." The room went still as Aqua read those words out loud to Mame's mother. Tears flowed freely. The guests, one by one, sat down and wept. The groom's face turned pale. He said nothing. There was nothing he could say. Mame didn't run away in shame. She walked away with strength. She left behind a diary full of pain, yes, but also truth. Truth that needed to be heard. The wedding never happened, but that day became something else entirely. A moment when everyone realized how dangerous silence can be, and how brave it is to finally break free. The sun was bright, the flowers were fresh, and the guests had started arriving at the outdoor wedding venue in Cape Town. Everyone was excited to see Zinzi walk down the aisle. She was the kind of bride people admired, elegant, kind, quiet. The groom stood at the altar, laughing with his groomsmen, while the photographers waited to capture the big moment. But that moment never came. Minutes turned into half an hour. Her bridesmaids were whispering. The music kept replaying the same soft tune. Her mother looked confused. The wedding planner tried to keep things under control, but it was clear, Zinzi was missing. Her phone was off, her bag was still in the dressing tent, and her veil lay untouched on the chair. People began to panic. Some thought she had cold feet. Others whispered that maybe she had run away with someone else. The groom, trying to hide his anger, kept saying, "She'll come. She's just nervous." But behind the venue, near the garden where the bouquets were being prepared, a florist named Thandi found something tucked under a bush, a small pink notebook with Zinzi's name on it. She opened it, curious. But as she started reading, her hands began to shake. Zinzi had written about something no one knew, something she had never told a soul. 3 weeks before the wedding, during an argument in his car, the groom had assaulted her. He grabbed her, shouted at her, and forced himself on her. She tried to speak up, but her family told her not to ruin everything. They said, "It's just a mistake. He's a good man. You'll be fine after marriage." But she wasn't fine. She wrote about the nightmares, the fear, the shame. She wrote about crying alone in the shower, pretending everything was okay, just so her mother wouldn't worry. She blamed herself, then reminded herself it wasn't her fault. Again and again she wrote, "This is not love." On the last page, she wrote the words that broke everyone's heart. "I will not celebrate the man who broke me." The florist ran to the family, and soon, the diary was read out loud by one of Zinzi's cousins. The guests were shocked. Some cried. Others sat frozen. The groom tried to walk away, but eyes followed him. No one clapped. No one smiled. Zinzi didn't run because she was weak. She disappeared because she was strong enough to say, "No more." The wedding was a lie, a performance she refused to continue. That day there were no vows, no first kiss, no cake. But there was truth, and truth finally was louder than tradition. The wedding was just about to start in Nairobi. Everything looked perfect. The garden was filled with white roses. Soft music played in the background, and the guests were seated, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Kayamika looked stunning in her white wedding dress. Her makeup was done, her hair was pinned perfectly, and her veil was ready. Everyone said she looked like a princess. But just minutes before she was supposed to walk down the aisle, Kayamika quietly stepped out of the bridal room. She told her bridesmaid she just needed a bit of fresh air. That was the last time anyone saw her. First, no one panicked. "She'll be right back," they said. But 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Her bridesmaids searched the garden, the restrooms, even the parking lot. She was gone. Her phone was on silent. Her bouquet was still on the table. Only her small silver diary was left on the chair, under her shawl. Her closest friend and bridesmaid, Wanjiku, picked it up. She had seen the diary before but never read it. This time something told her to open it. Inside were months, maybe even years, of Kayamika's thoughts and pain. She wrote about how the groom had slowly taken over her life. It started with small things, telling her what to wear, who to stop talking to, how to laugh more quietly. But with time it turned into something deeper. He made her feel guilty for having dreams. He mocked her when she cried. He told her she was lucky he chose her. She described how she lost herself little by little. She became a version of herself she didn't even recognize. Smiling in public, crying in secret. Her parents loved the groom. Everyone said he was successful, charming, a good catch. But none of them knew what happened behind closed doors. Then came the most painful confession of all. She never loved him. She thought maybe she would grow to love him. Maybe things would change after the wedding. But deep down she knew. This was not her person. This was not her life. She was marrying someone she didn't trust. Someone who controlled her. On the very last page she wrote, "Tell them I finally chose me. Not the dress. Not the show. Me." Wanjiku broke down in tears. She handed the diary to Kayamika's mother, who read it in silence. The guests sat confused as whispers filled the air. The groom looked around, his hands shaking. There was no explanation to give. There was no wedding that day. No music. No celebration. Just a missing bride and a diary full of quiet pain and brave truth. Kayamika wasn't running away. She was walking back to herself. And though her seat remained empty, her words stayed behind. Loud, honest, and unforgettable. The garden was set beautifully in Zimbabwe. White chairs, soft music, bright flowers, and a cake so perfect it looked like art. Everyone waited with smiles on their faces, ready to watch Ruto marry the man they all believed was her true love. The groom stood proudly at the altar. The sun was shining. Everything looked magical. But Ruto never showed up. At first, people thought she was fixing her dress or taking a moment alone. But minutes turned into an hour, and her bridesmaids were panicking. Her phone was off. Her makeup kit was still on the table. Her shoes were missing. It was clear Ruto was gone. As her family searched through the bridal tent, her cousin found her Bible on the chair. Inside, between the pages, was a small diary, something only Ruto had ever written in. No one had read it before. But now, with hands shaking, her cousin opened it. The truth spilled out in Ruto's own words. She wrote about how she begged her family to listen when things started to feel wrong. She told them how the groom yelled at her, controlled her, and once, in a moment of rage, hit her. She had cried, shaken with fear, but they told her to forgive him. "All men make mistakes," they said. "Don't embarrass the family." She kept quiet. She smiled through the pain, but inside she was breaking. She wrote about nights when she couldn't sleep, about mornings when she didn't want to wake up. She asked God for a sign, and when it didn't come, she made a choice herself. On the last page, she wrote one line that said everything. "I'll disappear before I let this ruin my soul." The guests sat in silence when the diary was read. The groom's face turned pale. There were no more smiles. No more music. All they had left were cake, flowers, and Ruto's words. She didn't run away because she was weak. She left because she finally found the strength to protect herself. She may not have said her vows, but that day, she made the bravest promise of all, to love and save herself. It was supposed to be the happiest day of Safina's life. The wedding hall in Lusaka was filled with music, laughter, and guests dressed in their best clothes. The decorations were beautiful, the food was ready, and everyone was waiting for the bride. The groom stood at the altar, smiling proudly, ready to begin a new life with her. But Safina never came. Her friends thought maybe she was just nervous, maybe fixing her veil or makeup. But minutes turned into hours. The whispers started. Her mother looked worried. Her phone rang and rang, but there was no answer. That's when her maid of honor found Safina's diary left behind in the dressing room. It was a small brown notebook. Inside, her final entry was written just that morning. "Marrying him would be my funeral." The words sent a chill through everyone who read them. Page after page, Safina had written about the truth she never shared publicly. The man she was supposed to marry had been slowly destroying her with words, control, and manipulation. He made her feel worthless, made her question her own voice, and made sure she never felt good enough. But no one saw it because he smiled in public and played the perfect gentleman. She had wanted to leave many times, but her family told her to stay. "He's successful," they said. "You're lucky he chose you." So she stayed quiet. But her heart was breaking. She wrote that she couldn't walk into a marriage where she already felt like a prisoner. Later that evening, Safina was found sitting quietly at a small bus station outside town, still wearing part of her wedding dress. She wasn't crying. She was calm. When asked why she left, she said, "Because I wanted to live." Her diary was shared online, and the story went viral. Women across the country shared their own stories. The groom's reputation fell apart. And Safina, she chose not to hide. She went on national TV and spoke about emotional abuse, about how not all pain leaves bruises. The wedding didn't happen, but something bigger did. Safina didn't just save herself, she gave others the courage to do the same. The wedding in Cape Town was grand. Everyone was dressed beautifully, the venue sparkled, and the air was filled with excitement. Amelie was supposed to walk down the aisle in just a few minutes. The groom stood waiting, the guests were smiling, and the music had already started. But Amelie didn't show up. Her bridesmaids looked everywhere. Her makeup was done, her dress was ready, but she was gone. People began whispering. Some blamed her immediately. She ran away. How could she do this on her wedding day? Even her own family was shocked and angry. Then, while packing up her things, her cousin found something in the veil box. A small pink diary. No one had seen it before. Curious and desperate for answers, she opened it. The truth hit like a storm. Amelie had written about how the groom had been blackmailing her. A year ago they had shared some private moments. Photos, messages. And later, when she tried to end the relationship, he threatened to leak them if she left him. He smiled in public, acted like the perfect partner, but in secret, he controlled her with fear. She wrote about how scared she was, how she cried herself to sleep, not knowing what to do. Her heart wasn't in the wedding, only fear was. She had begged him to stop, but he laughed and reminded her how much she'd lose if those photos got out. She felt trapped, ashamed, and alone. On the last page, Amelie wrote, "I won't marry someone who owns my fear. If silence protects him, then truth will protect me." The diary was shared, first with her family, then online. Within hours, the story went viral. People were shocked. The groom's perfect image shattered. Thousands of women came forward with similar stories. And Amelie, she didn't hide. A few weeks later, she sat on a national talk show, holding her diary in her lap. With calm strength, she told the world what happened, and why she chose to walk away. They once blamed her for running. Now they stood and clapped. She didn't just escape. She exposed the truth. And in doing so, she turned her pain into power. The wedding in Enugu was almost ready to begin. Guests were seated, the music was soft and beautiful, and the groom stood proudly at the altar. Everyone waited for Ifeoma, the bride, to walk down the aisle. She had always dreamed of this day. At least that's what everyone thought. But minutes before the ceremony, she vanished. Her bridesmaids searched the dressing room. Her phone was still there, her makeup bag untouched, but her bouquet was lying on the chair, torn. Right beside it was her small diary. One of her friends opened it, desperate for a clue. Inside, Ifeoma had written about something she had kept buried deep inside her heart. She had found out, just weeks before the wedding, that the man she was about to marry had secretly fathered a child, not just with anyone but with her own cousin. The betrayal shattered her. When she confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just told her to let the past stay in the past. Her family asked her to forgive and move on. The wedding is too close, they said. Don't shame the family. But Ifeoma couldn't pretend. She wrote about the nights she cried alone, the way her chest tightened every time she looked at him. The pain wasn't just from what he did, it was from knowing no one stood with her. On the final page of her diary, she wrote, "They wanted a bride. I wanted peace. I walked away with my dignity." The guests sat in silence as her diary was read out loud. Some couldn't believe it. Others quietly wiped tears. The groom looked stunned, caught off guard in front of everyone. There was no wedding that day. But Ifeoma's quiet choice made more noise than any ceremony ever could. She didn't just leave a groom, she left a lie. And in doing so, she taught everyone that sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is choose herself. The wedding in Johannesburg was breathtaking. The hall was glowing with candles and flowers, and everyone said it was the most beautiful wedding they had ever seen. Thabisa was the bride everyone admired, elegant, graceful, and always smiling. The guests waited, the music played, and the groom stood at the altar, ready. But Thabisa never came. Her bridesmaids searched everywhere. Her veil was on the chair, and her shoes were still in the box. When one of them opened the box, they found something hidden under the heels, a small diary with her handwriting on the cover. Inside, Thabisa had written the truth she never dared to say out loud. She had been covering up physical abuse for months. The groom, charming and well-loved in public, was someone else behind closed doors. He would lose his temper, push her, hurt her, then cry and apologize. Each time, he promised it wouldn't happen again. She believed him. Her family told her to keep quiet, to protect the family's name. Marriage has ups and downs, they said. Don't ruin this. But Thabisa couldn't live in fear anymore. On the last page she wrote, "Today was supposed to be joy. Instead I escaped. Let them say I ran, but I know I survived." The guests sat in silence. There was no wedding, no celebration, just the painful truth in her words. Thabisa didn't just disappear, she freed herself. And in doing so, she reminded everyone that no beautiful wedding is worth hiding a broken soul.